fortunate. And so we have a lot to talk about, just a lot to get to. And if you Hi everybody, welcome to
Let's
the
talk about
conversation.
love, health and wellness, transformation, yeah, we got it. Discuss your breakthroughs, national
Our local
issues.
Bahamians, but also those who are listening around the region and the world as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have an audience that really from Europe to the United States, Canada, around the region, and of course, Bahamians right here who are very interested in just wanting to know the answers and ask the questions that get them the answers that they seek. Before we introduce
a little inspiration, tune into the conversation. Talk about it on the conversation.
This is the time.
When you need a little
when the country really need to find ways to join together to fight common problems that we have. Collaborative leadership.
You need a little conversation. We can go far with the conversation. Here with Shanique on the conversation, yeah.
Please share the video, share. Tag some people in the live feed, share it in your private Facebook group, share it in your WhatsApp group.
Here with Shanique on the conversation, yeah.
Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the conversation. It's wonderful to see all of you already streaming. Hey, good afternoon to you all, wherever you are streaming from. If you want to drop that in there and let us know, of course. But welcome from wherever you are. I see New York City. Hi to you, Joanne Lewis. Thank you so much for streaming live with us today. Wherever you are tuned in from and streaming, welcome to a brand new week here on The Conversation. We are starting with something that is impacting the globe. It is, and it's certainly, you all know, tourism has been our number one industry. It remains our number one industry. It is a key sector in countries around the world, truly. And the thing is, we have to have a sobering look at where we are. Here's what's happening, for example, just today, Atlantis announced further furloughs of additional employees. Australia and the tourism sector there and the tourism minister is telling that country and the tourism players there that, listen, we don't see this fully rebounding and international travel getting to where it was for another 9 months to a year. And this is really the story around the world. President Joe Biden just today implemented a policy that would prevent several European countries from entering the United States, South Africa from entering the United States, the United Kingdom. And so travel is constricted significantly worldwide. And guess what? It's impacting us here. You remember last week, you saw our tourism minister, Dionisio de Aguilar, talk about the impact and basically the blow, the sort of unexpected blow that the new policy regards to any foreign person entering the US right now. Perhaps all of that came into effect today, and how substantial a blow that is. But we are very, very happy to have the minister here with us here on the conversation this afternoon. Minister Dionisio de Aguilar, welcome to the conversation, sir, and good afternoon to you.
Shanique, thank you so much for having me on the conversation. This is my initiation. This is my first time on your wonderful show. So very, very much looking forward to it. And thank you once again for having me.
I thank you. I wouldn't want to be in your position. I don't know if anybody would, because these are unprecedented times. These are times that you got to think on your feet and be running at the same time. I'll start here. Where is the Bahamas' tourism product? I mean, what do we have left of a product to try and salvage?
So our product is still wonderful. Our product is still incredible. We have wonderful hotels. We have beautiful islands. We have incredible people. We're a great location on the planet for tourism. Unfortunately, though, world tourism is under assault. With the advent of COVID-19, it has basically brought traveling to a screeching halt. And there were ways that you could bumble along, for lack of a better word. But it's getting increasingly more difficult as countries around us, as our source markets really get get assaulted by this COVID-19. Our number one market, of course, is the United States. And we see every night the amount of COVID positive cases, the amount of deaths. Canada is our second largest market, and they have totally shut their doors to anybody coming into Canada unless you're a returning Canadian. And then you have to quarantine for 14 days. And then you have Europe, which is, you know, they're probably going through their second, possibly third surge. And so we don't even have any flights coming from Europe because there's just nobody wishes to travel that far with the requirements that they will have to undergo when they return home. So it is very much an extremely challenging time for tourism. And as every Bahamian knows, tourism is the lifeblood of our economy. 2 out of every 3 jobs is derived from tourism. 50%.
2 out of every 3 jobs.
Yeah, 50% of our GDP, all that we produce, 50% of it is derived from the tourism sector. So it is enormously impactful.
I certainly can imagine that. I mean, we'll break it down a little bit, but let's just talk about the new US policy, even as it relates just to our region. You spoke about it last week. You were quite, listen, I know that we wanted to put together, I don't know if it's a region if we did it or just a country, but we wanted to say, hi, President Biden, sir, can you sort of revise this slightly just for this region? Has that conversation been official? Has the recommendation been official? And if so, what's the response been?
So we have certainly let the American channels that are available to us know what our position is. But as you can imagine, the US government is in a massive state of transition. So they don't even have cabinet secretaries appointed yet. And then all of the policy makers to whom you're going to appeal to are not in place. All you have are senior civil servants, and they are in essence holding on until the policy makers come in. We haven't had a U.S. ambassador in the country since 2011, so you know it has proven difficult. But you know, I'm going to scream from the hilltops. Certainly, all of my constituents or who work in the tourism sector are banking on the tourism industry for their jobs, and I'm gonna point out to any American that will listen that first and foremost, we're a very small country, as is most of the English-speaking Caribbean. Second of all, our level of COVID is relatively small. So as such, we pose very little risk to the United States, very little risk. And then we are situated in what I would term as their sphere of influence. We're in the American sphere of influence, and we derive much of our trade, do most of our trade with, or derive most of our tourists from the United States. So given that we're not posing that level of risk, given that we're so dependent on their country for our economic survival, you know, to use the Bahamian vernacular, man throws a bone.
Man throws let something, man. But I'll tell you this though, do you really think, considering the picture you painted of the US, and it's a real one, and it's probably even more than you have said, and so considering that picture, considering the rate of infection, considering the key markets that are experiencing spikes, and then the new strains and all this stuff that's going on, the vaccine that's now going to take 3 years, I even hate to let it come out my mouth, to perhaps vaccinate the majority of Americans. Do you really think Joe Biden and his administration have as their concern the fact that, you know what, dude, sir, you all are doing this to Caribbean countries that largely and almost solely depend on you all for its GDP?
Well, you know, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're relatively small, and it may be seen to be, because of our smallness, insignificant, right? But we're right on their border. I mean, we're right here. We're not South America, we're not Europe and Africa, and we're not Asia. We're right here. We're right on your border. Nassau is the closest capital to the United States. So, you know, it is, and you know, I even if my screaming and my shouting and my jumping up and down has no effect, I still have to do it. Right. I always believe it's better to influence an outcome, because they're still sort of crafting policy and how's this going to work and how's this going to play out. And as they're in that crafting of policy mode, I could be screaming from the hilltops, because once the decision is made, it's hard as hell to change that decision. I mean, once they start, that train leaves the station, it's very, very difficult to change a decision. I mean, you look at Europe, for example. The Americans back in March, when Italy was exploding with cases and Spain was getting heavy, the Americans said, you know what? We don't want COVID coming here, so we're shutting that down. That was March of last year. Here we are in January of 2021. They still haven't changed that policy. So anybody who is coming from Europe still can't, unless you come out of Europe for 14 days. You got to find a country to which you could fly directly to the United States. You have to come out of Europe for 14 days before you can enter the United States. So, and now they were thinking about, I mean, in the dying days of the Trump administration, they were thinking at allowing travel between Europe and the United States to resume with a COVID or PCR test. But President Biden, from what I can hear today, is saying, well, I don't know if I want to do that just yet with all these strains that are out there. You know, maybe we have to hold off on that. And then he's been mentioning the Q word, which is quarantine. So this is what's being causing everybody to get ditherous.
Yeah, it really is something. I want to ask you, Australia, which has its borders closed, is saying that they don't expect this world tourism, this travel. And I know we positioned differently because we are right there. Throw a rock and you hit the Bahamas. However, do you share those views? 9 to 12 months in terms of sort of some rebounding that's really noticeable?
My initial, January 1 view was that, we were going to have a rough 6 months in the first 6 months of the year. And then the second 6 months of the year, we're going to be progressively getting better. July, August, September. And as you got down to Christmas, things would be obviously not 100% of 2019, but maybe 70% or 80% of 2019. Right now we're at 5-10%. We were. And this mention by President Biden that he is contemplating the quarantining of U.S. citizens when they come back.
Right. Now, how impactful is that for us to even want them to come out the U.S. to begin with?
Yeah, it's extremely troubling. It's extremely economically impactful, because there's a school of thought that think, well, how are they going to enforce it? We've been through our quarantining, right? And we found it very difficult to enforce. So my view is that quarantining, unless you could put an ankle bracelet on every human being, is almost impossible to enforce. But, and for those that don't want to do it, I'm sure in the United States, it'll be quite easy for them not to do it. But, if your government tells you to do something, there's going to be a large portion of your populace that are going to follow the government's guidelines. Now, yes, I know it's enforceable, but the government tell me I must quarantine.
Yeah.
So I'm going to quarantine because that's what they tell me. The experts have looked at it and they tell me that, after I get back, I should go home and stay home for 7 days. Now, that's what they tell me to do. That's the responsible thing to do. And I want to be a responsible citizen. And then 3 to 5 days after getting home, I should take a test. And then if I don't take a test, I should stay home for 10 days. So it's 7 with a test and 10 without a test. So now, you may think it's impossible for them to enforce, but it's going to definitely affect people's decision to travel overseas.
To travel to begin with.
And then you have to get a test to come back. And that into itself is fine. We are wonderfully positioned because of our entry protocols and our requirement of a 5-day test, 5-day rapid antigen test, 5 days after being in the country to do this test. We had built out a network of places, almost 80 testing facilities, where people could easily obtain this antigen test throughout the length and breadth of the country. So, we felt that we could navigate that. Still a bit of a pain. Any impediment to travel restricts travel. So we felt that we could, that was a plan B, but we could work through that. But certainly now that the United States is contemplating this requirement of potentially quarantining, this is extremely impactful. And you know, every Bahamian is relying on us as best as possible to see what we can do to mitigate this, and you know, and drive home, you know, the fact that we're not much risk to the United States. So throw us a bone, please. It doesn't.
Well, that's interesting. By the way, if you were just tuning in, please welcome to today's show, Hot Topics Monday. My first guest is Minister of Tourism, Dionysia Diagil, who's been lobbying hard since last week, right after, because almost like either the evening of him being officially sworn in, the president announced that, listen, this is what the new policy is going forward, because he figures he has to get a hand on or handle on the COVID-19 explosion throughout his country. And so he figured he's coming down hard everywhere. And so the Minister of Tourism immediately responded saying, my God, this is just not the best news for us. This is going to hurt us tremendously. And today he is here to talk about that and other things. By the way, Atlantis announced just today, they did so well, I think, on Friday, saying, oh, we're going to offer this free rapid test. And then today, they announced that they are adding to the furlough list, meaning more employees are going home until. Have you heard from properties that maybe they've already received or felt an impact because of the president's new policies?
Absolutely. They have expressed that they are getting a number of cancellations. Atlantis made known to me of a very big cancellation of a huge group that was coming. You know, there's confusion, and people are uncertain. And when they don't feel confident about traveling, they don't. So as I predicted, you know, these comments by President Biden is having a significant impact on travel and a significant impact on Americans leaving their country. So, you know, do they go on a vacation to Colorado or Orlando, or do they pop over to possibly one of the most beautiful countries in the world and to come to the Bahamas, which of course that is what we want them to do. You know, it's troubling, and you know, while we are as best as possible trying to make our case known and to make a case for not only the Bahamas, but for our brothers and sisters in the English-speaking Caribbean, that, you know, we're all relatively small. We're all have relatively low cases of COVID. We all rely hugely on the United States for our economic survival. You know, we're very close to the United States and in their sphere. You know, we're trying as best as we can to get special consideration. You know, we even can pull the Kamala Harris being half Jamaican card if we have to.
Listen, man, you know, I mean, sis,
you know, I've been, as a matter of fact, I've been on the phone with the Jamaican Minister of Tourism, and we're sort of planning, and, you know, other ministers of tourism in the region, you know, how best to tackle this and how best to address this concern. It's you know, and the Bahamian people, the constituents of Freetown, everybody is relying on tourism for their bread and butter. And until we crack this nut, it's going to be a rough ride. And I you know, I was hoping that every month since we opened, because we reopened the economy on the 1st of November, you know, so many of my constituents in Freetown were telling me how they were going back to work and they're getting their jobs back.
Very happy.
You know, yeah, so that, you know, and Christmas went relatively well. You know, we you know, a lot of the major hotels only opened on the 10th and 17th of December, so it wasn't as good as it could have been. But, you know, you're getting the wheels of tourism going again and getting flights back in and all that, and everybody was gearing up with their marketing plan, and the Ministry of Tourism was starting to remarket again and get back in the market, try to attract people back, to get Bahamians, my constituents, places where you live, back to work. You know, just trying to make that happen. And now, you know, it almost like you're climbing up the hill and bam, you fall back down again and you start climbing again. But, you know, the silver lining, Shanique, in all of this is one hopes that President Biden is bringing a renewed focus to addressing the coronavirus in the United States. Now, everybody would agree that it has not been handled as well as it could have been. and the level of deaths and the amount of community spread have just been unacceptable. And at least, I guess, and I'm looking for a silver lining here, that he is really focused like a laser on addressing this problem, getting the vaccine into people, getting the level of community spread down. And apparently, you know, it's from all reports, it is flattening a little. And hopefully with his renewed focus, he can address this problem and bring it under control far quicker with his level of focus, which maybe in the short term creates hardship for us, but gets us to the promised land quicker. So we could have bumbled along, you know, with the United States in its current state, and really the best we could have done is maybe 25 or 30%. But if he can get this this virus under control in the US and get everybody settled by the latter part of this year, that will bode well for the Bahamas. So yes, in the short term, this may be painful, but it seems as if, and I'm very impressed with his level of focus, his determination, his grit, his concern about the issue, and jumping on top of it. So I think in the long term, that would bode well for the Bahamas. So I'm looking for the silver lining, and that's the silver lining that I'm seeing. And I remain hopeful that that is indeed the case.
Yeah, and we're not dismissing or trying to at all downplay the importance of the United States and the world getting ahead of this virus or disease. But you know, we're just talking about the economic fallout. Speaking of one of those Caribbean countries you mentioned, I understand it is so bad that they're looking at perhaps, you know, having to shave numbers of their public service. Of course, you're not here to discuss that. You're strictly looking at tourism, but tourism is one of those sectors that employs, no, I ain't gonna put you in that kind of, tourism is one of those sectors that employ from, I know, right? From high end all the way to just the person trying to make it and work their way up. And so it certainly is an industry that has served us well. Let me get to a few comments and then we'll talk about, you talk about Atlantis losing a substantial group recently. Perhaps that's why they sent out that a notice earlier today and say, listen, you know, employees, stick with us through this, but we're gonna have to furlough some of you all because they lost that group that they were looking forward to. But the group canceled for now. Here's Stephanie McPhee in Italy. A question for the minister. Is the government content with the performance of the Bahamas Tourism Office in Milan?
Well, we don't actually have an office in Italy anymore. We run our Italian operations out of London. You know, obviously we're a very small country and we have a very limited budget, even more so now. And all of our European operations are consolidated in Europe and and we have another office in Paris. And so, you know, we were, I mean, up to 2019, we were very impressed with our numbers out of Europe. In fact, we were very impressed with our numbers out of everywhere because we were on full-blown cylinders and doing, you know, record levels of foreign visitors despite Hurricane Dorian. So yes, we consolidated our operations. You know, tourism today is a little bit different than what it once was. In the good old days, you would have offices all over the place and they would go to travel agents and they would try and convince travel agents for people to travel. And while that still happens in a certain niche market, and maybe even in Europe still to a certain degree, by and large, a large portion of our foreign visitors come here purchasing a vacation over the internet. Online. And Expedia is the largest provider of travelers to the Bahamas, certainly up until the pandemic hit. So that is just how things are morphing.
Shanique Gibson is asking, is the quarantine in place yet? I am guessing she's referring to the US quarantine.
No, I don't believe it is. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, America's very confusing because you have the federal, you have the state, and you have the local.
Right.
And so I think the governor of Florida today was telling everybody that, you know, President Biden has no jurisdiction over who needs to quarantine in his state, and that will be his rule. So, you know, the confusion, the problem is it will create even more confusion. And I think President Biden has remit over anybody who travels interstate or goes into federal buildings or whatever, But what is quickly becoming quite clear is that he really doesn't have jurisdiction over what you do when you return home, certainly at the state and local level. But as I said before, that might be the case, and you could get away with ignoring his protocols, but there will be a certain portion of the country or of the citizenry, as in our citizenry, who want to do and who thinks that the government rules are correct and they want to follow those guidelines. So the fact that he's mentioned it is having the impact, and we're feeling it and seeing it right now. So the reality on the ground is whether he has remit over it or not, it's negatively impacting tourist arrivals to this country.
You heard the minister say, Atlantis just in the last few days had a major group that just canceled because who wants to, it's a lot to go through to travel. And then when you think about returning, that's another thing. And so it really is having its impact. Mary Lou Peterson says, Biden doesn't even care for American citizens, so he is not going to hear your cry. However, people are not going to vacation if they must wear a mask at all the whole time. Well, I'll tell you this, you see, Biden is pushing a whole different policy direction and directive. He is insisting on masks. And so that certainly is a drive.
I don't, America's been immersed in this huge political discussion about masks, and this country, in the Bahamas, we've been very clear. You wear masks in public and you socially distance, and it has been working relatively well for us. And we have relatively low amounts of COVID. We have 14 or 15 people in hospital. Most days when we have tests, the positive cases are under 5% of the total people tested. And I'm told that that's within a good guideline. So, it has worked well for us. Yes, it's probably impacted our economy. But, this is the fine line that the government is walking. You want to open it up for commerce to happen, but you don't want to open it up too much where you get an uptick in community spread. And that's what we've been there, done that. That was not an ideal situation, and the amount of deaths were rapidly rising, and we have arrested that. And our death rate has come down significantly, and the amount of positive COVID cases has come down significantly. So in that department, we have done very well, I think, so far. And obviously, the Prime Minister spoke about it today in Parliament. Don't get loosey-caboosey.
Haven't we gotten loosey-caboosey, and that's why the emergency orders have been extended? Your thoughts on that, sir? You want to respond?
Well, I think that it's not stable, and we could easily go back up, and the government needs the tools to fight this coronavirus. And I think most people would agree that the fact that we have 10 o'clock at the night until 5 o'clock in the morning, we have a curfew. Most jurisdictions have a curfew to stop, activities in the late parties and nightclubs and all that sort of stuff, which would lead to community spread. I just think the government needs the flexibility to fight coronavirus and be able to move quickly. And this government, there's been a certain amount of stability since we opened on the 1st of November. There's hardly been any changes. If there have been changes, there's been just a slight loosening here and a slight loosening here. But given that what's going on around us, we're still in a very precarious state. And so I am supportive of keeping the measures in place, because you don't know, it could turn on a dime. You get, Prime Minister said today in Parliament, one person could lead to a massive spread. So he needs to be able to have the tools.
Those new strains in South Africa and being spotted around the United States and Canada. Yes. Canada, of course, borders, I think, remain closed, as you pointed out, in some of their areas, even more restricted, and other countries around the world. Minister, how has Bahamas been faring? We heard Atlantis sending people home. We heard Atlantis. Hello to you, Cheyenne Williams. Hello to everybody who's watching. I do apologize for not being able to get to many of your comments, but my special guest this first half hour is Minister of Tourism Dionisio de Aguilar, the Member of Parliament for Freetown. Yes, Freetown. And he is talking about, though, an industry that's really troubled, an industry that only today the largest private sector employer furloughed additional employees. What about Bahamar? I have not heard much about what they are doing, how they have been impacted so far.
I'm sure all of the hotels are probably going to be impacted the same. Now, what we found was certainly over Christmas and shortly thereafter, and certainly when the industry opened, is the very high-end market continued to do relatively well. You know, the gated communities, the family islands that have a very boutique product, people coming in on their yachts. That high-end market continued to be quite resilient.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we need that solid middle market. We need the cruise industry to resume. So many people in my constituency, Freetown, are reliant on those sectors as well. So you can't just survive on the very high end. I remember one hotel operator who runs a very high-end product indicated to me that his hotel did better this year than last year.
Wow.
Not his food and beverage, because he couldn't have as many celebrations and the like for social distancing rules. But people perceived the Bahamas to be safe, and they wanted to get away. And especially the very high-end traveling market, they can move. It's easy for them to move. So they move deftly throughout the world, and they navigate all of these restrictions quite easily.
Right, they travel kind of a little differently.
Yes,
so
I know.
The high-end
not like
market.
yeah.
And by the way, obviously I have to give my Hot Topics panel a minute over, Cara. But by the way, how is that Come and Stay and Work for a Year project going?
I don't know. I need to get an update on that. The Ministry of Tourism was the ministry that put together the entire marketing plan for that. It was a wonderful program that my Director General, Joy Gibberlou, and her marketing team really put together a great marketing package for the Ministry of Immigration for them to go out and market this. But my ministry was just involved in developing the PR and public relations. So I'm not really haven't got my pulse on it, so I'll have to check in with the Minister of Immigration to find out how that's going. But you know, it's a great plan, and we want people to come here. And I must say, when I was speaking to tourists over Christmas, they all felt with our entry protocols, the PCR test 5 days before, you know, the visa, the rapid antigen 5 days after, they all told me, I feel safe here. I feel this is a safe place. And then obviously you compound that, layer on that the relatively small amounts of COVID that we had in the country over Christmas and continue to have, you know, it bode well. And I was like, okay, this message needs to get out. It's safe here. It's low levels of COVID. There's low density. We've got endless beaches, beautiful country, close to home. Something goes wrong, you can get home very quickly. And I was generally upbeat about what the future held. I mean, it can only go up. But before the recent curveball came in and sucked me hard.
Before the president made his policy statement. And finally, sir, here's a question from someone in the industry for decades. Learning from this experience, what steps is the government taking to have a larger stake in the industry, investment, and empowering of Bahamians? So I guess we are better able to shoulder something like this.
So I want everybody to remember that this is a once in a century pandemic. You know, there's no one in the government, not one cabinet minister, that could ever have contemplated this level of world catastrophe, right? And for us to navigate this, and you know, we haven't gotten it right all the time, and when we feel that we've gotten it wrong or we've made a mistake, hopefully we've adjusted course quickly to get us back on track. And you know, we made some mistakes because we just didn't know, right? But we've learned, and we built a bank of knowledge. And I think we brought some stability now. There's a level of stableness. We kind of have our formula working for us. We have our level of COVID down. Unfortunately, we don't live in a world that is just involves us. We have to rely on the rest of the world. And I don't think the countries from whom most of our foreign visitors originate from have had as much luck as we have. We're a small country, so maybe it's easier to do, but it was difficult. And we made some mistakes, we made some hiccups, and we had our second surge in August, September, October. And now we're as the world is going through their second or third surge, we're kind of missing that. So we've made our mistakes, we've learned from them, and I think we're walking that fine line ever so deftly to keep us in that sweet spot where our number of cases are relatively low, but our economy is allowed to tick as much as it can tick.
So hopefully, fortunately, hopefully, but that's great news. And hopefully, maybe after things settle within this new Biden administration, they can kind of take a look, see, and say, you know what, maybe we should revisit some stuff. And this final comment from Cheyenne Williams says, we need a new vision for the tourism industry. It saddens me because I'm one of the persons who's been trying to help by making numerous presentations and ideas and sharing my vision, only to be shut down from persons who are blind to new beginnings. And of course, you know, we can talk about that all day, about the fact that we need to freshen up this product. We need to revise the product. We need to also expand, diversify. And so tourism isn't the only thing, that big golden egg right there. That's it right there. No, we need a few other things happening. And so, Minister, I thank you so much, sir. If you have a final comment,
I just want to say that, you know, everybody always says that we should diversify into other things, but everybody's light on into what? And, you know, tourism is the industry that is growing, what was and was before coronavirus came, was growing quite nicely every year worldwide.
True.
And was providing a very high standard of living for the Bahamas. Now, yes, we should diversify, but into what? And really, this industry is going to be around for quite some time in terms of the amount of employment and economic impact that it has. So we can look and we can continue to explore. And certainly if Cheyenne wants to reach out to me, I don't know if she's presented to me and I'm one of those people that have ignored her, but I don't remember. So she can always reach out to me and I'm happy to entertain and to see her comments and see how we can make this better.
Minister of Tourism, Dionisio de Aguila, Member of Parliament for Freetown. I do thank you very much, sir, because I know you were in Parliament earlier. I know that you are now busy in your constituency, and of course we would like to have you back to even talk politics, talk with that aspect. But I thank you today for talking tourism with us and just kind of sharing some perspective with us on where the industry stands, what's happening with the hotels. And the fact that you and your team are working along with other ministers of tourism around the region, are working daily to get this new Biden administration to look at the region differently. And so, of course, when that does happen, and of course, we will stay in touch and continue to hear from you and the progress you're making. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on my very first Shanique Miller show. And and I look forward to coming back on anytime.
I look forward to having you. I look forward to having you, sir. Thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you too.
Thank you. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, the Hot Topics panel is going to weigh in. Stay exactly where you are.
Maybe it's for the thrill, or the scenery, or maybe you do it for the speed, or maybe it's for the baby. It might just be for the next stop, or even for the beautiful moments. Whatever your reason for driving, we'll be there to keep you going. Atura Auto, servicing your vehicle at a price that keeps your pockets happy. Call us today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the conversation. Thank you all so much. Of course, our first guest this afternoon was Minister of Tourism, Dionisio de Aguila, talking about the very vulnerable, very tender spot that the tourism industry is in. You heard him say, well, first of all, today, if you missed it, Atlantis furloughed, they didn't give a number, but furloughed a number of employees again, adding to the number that they did about a week or so ago. And then the minister was on a few minutes ago talking about the fact that, you know, number one, it's perhaps due to the Biden policy. And then number two, that a huge group who perhaps were impacted and influenced by that new policy just canceled their reservations. They perhaps didn't want to go through all of that. Welcome to the Hot Topics panel. I see Candice Scott, I see Glenroy Pratt, and Aisha Clare. Good afternoon to each of you. How's everybody doing today?
Good afternoon.
So I will start with you, Candice. What are your thoughts on what the minister, okay, I see the other two. Your thoughts on what the minister had to say and shared with us this afternoon?
Good afternoon, Shanique, and to your audience. Thank you once again. Very sobering. Is body language, is facial expression. It is very sobering. This is our reality. Tourism has been our #1 industry for forever. And you know what was interesting is last questions there. I hear everybody saying diversify, but diversify into what? The government is doing what it can. I think the tourism product is totally out of their control. What do they do now? What do they do when the demands, the unemployment rate continue to increase? As long as there's no tourism product coming in, the unemployment seems to be increasing. The strain on the national agencies like NIB and social service will continue to be strained. The government has taken out a number of loans to subsidize NIB, to subsidize social service, to subsidize the feeding program. And we're a year into the pandemic. We are a year into the fallout from the pandemic. And obviously it is not decreasing. We are now entering a new phase, I believe, when you see the new president of the United States of America makes several decisions, and a number of countries have been negatively impacted by his decisions. But like the former president, his first priority is the United States of America. And so no matter who enter that office, their priority will always be the United States of America. And people must, especially cheerleaders from the outside side, Glenroy, should take note that this is the reality. We are in a very serious, a different level of crisis, I believe. And according to the minister, they really at the mercy. When you hear the minister saying, throw us a bone, I'm like,
throw us a bone.
Jesus, that's like low level at the bigger end of the table, not even crumbs. Throw us a bone. That's where we at. And I want Bahamians to take note that this is not political. We are in this together. And if we're going to suffer, we're going to suffer together. And so we must take the necessary precautions. We don't like restrictions, but we need to recognize the importance of these restrictions to minimize the numbers, because that is a selling tool for our country.
Well, we'll talk about after we get the feedback from Glenroy and Aisha about the extension to the emergency orders, and we believe that's going to be extended further. But Glenroy, Peggy said, you know, you were part of that cheerleading squad. Now, do you see there's a very popular resort, the biggest private employer in the country, to send more people home today on furlough because of cancellations of reservations, because a major group that we just heard canceled, because then it's a lot to travel now. And so they decided, no, we'll sit this one out until another time. Your thoughts, Glenroy, on the minister, what he had to say, or any aspect of what has taken place?
Good afternoon, Aisha, Peggy, good afternoon, Bahamas. The reality is that America, the minister is right. He's right. There's a domestic medication that the Bahamian people have. And sometimes I think that by not trying to understand the reality in which we're in, we pacify ourselves with thoughts that are not realistic. And as a result of that, themselves in this land of illusionism and understand
Glenroy, I don't know what we can do with your connect. Okay, I can see you now. Let's hope it's better. Because you're kind of very staticky. Go ahead.
Yeah, the tourism industry has faced many blows in the past and will continue to face blows, but it's a resilient industry. And we have to understand that as time progresses, we will see the resiliency of that industry coming back. You know, the economy is taking a blow now because of the pandemic, and that is a reality. We have relied heavily on people's discretionary income for that is something that that's continues to stay us. When we find that things happen around the world, those persons with a discretionary income start to pull back. There's no stake in the question that you ask, you know, what do we need to do to allow ourselves a better stake in the game of the tourism industry? But make no mistake, I hear a lot of talks about abandoning the industry. That is foolish talk. The tourism industry is some quarter stated at 1.5 trillion industry.
Glenroy, you know something? You make such great, awesome point. I don't want to miss your points. See if you can, I'm not sure how Zoom works, but see if you can go out and come back in and it's clearer and stronger, because I want to hear what you have to say, because you're right. Australia is saying it's a key part of their economy, the tourism industry. I have, you know, I just saw pictures from the center of Florence where it's bustling. I mean, every year with tourists, with tourists from all over the world. Empty. You would think it's a postcard you're looking at with just the buildings there and the cathedrals, etc. And so it's really impacted the entire world. Aisha, are you there?
I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Aisha.
Thank you for having me.
Your audio is exceptionally low.
It is?
Are you there?
I'm here. I'm here.
Better.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
What, you want me to weigh in on the tourism situation?
Yes, weigh in on what the minister had to say, or some aspect of the president's, the U.S. president's announcement and the impact and already the fallout in the Bahamas.
Okay, well, it was a sobering interview with the Minister of Tourism, like Peggy said. Hi, Peggy.
Hi.
It was a sobering interview. You can hear the heart from the tourism minister. Like, this is our reality. You know, we have had tourism first on our everything for years. Tourism was that. It was it. It brought in the income. It brought in the jobs. Tourism did that. Now we're in a place where tourism is not doing that. So the question is now, what do we do? President Biden, he is protecting the country. And that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to protect your country. And, you know, following all of, you know, his meetings and what his people have to say, the people that consult with him, I believe he made a good move. However, in him making that move, it put us in this position. And we're now at what are we going to do? Now we have to explore what else can we do to tourism to make it attractive to other people. You know what I mean? Could we possibly have some sports tourism, whereas the NFL or the NBA or something like that, they can come over here and they could train for I don't know, for a certain amount of time. And we have 700 islands and keys. We have so much to offer the world, but how are we presenting it to the world's platform? How are we presenting it? Because you got to be attractive. We're not the only island in the world, okay? You have Jamaica, you have everybody who's experiencing COVID. How are we going to make the Bahamas attractive to the world? What are we going to do that is different, that is innovative, that the world is looking now and like, okay, with all these restrictions, we still want to go to the Bahamas. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, it's sobering. And when you get punched or you get hit physically, you take time to look back and what could I do differently because I need to heal first. What are we going to do to mend this situation? And then how are we going to revamp it? That's what we need to look at. We need to revamp this very quickly because COVID isn't going anywhere very, very soon, clearly.
But how do you revamp in the middle of the U.S. policies being what they are? And the U.S. is, let's be honest, the big bad boy in the room. You don't really question the U.S. You just got to kind of almost do what they say. But when they say and do what they do, they affect it reverberates, and that's obviously what's already been happening. And so how do you do that? Or is it time for us to always, as we've been talking for decades, truly, and the minister did say, how do you diversify? No, you cannot exclude tourism. Tourism will always be, yes, it's taken a hit now and it's going to perhaps remain this way for a good part of the year. But the point is, in the meantime, then, how do we kind of introduce something else? And should we have already been looking at something else and not tiptoeing around it and talking about it because it sounds good and for a good soundbite and a good headline? As you all think about that, let's just get this comment. Stephen Ferguson says, Candace, exactly. Government can't do nothing about it. So at least the sovereign wealth fund to the people, or release the sovereign wealth fund to the people. There are too many people suffering in this country. And as time goes on, even more will join the line, sad to say. Well, let's just talk about, first of all, what can we do to diversify? Then he brought up the sovereign wealth fund, something that is still in the infancy of even being formed. So I don't know how impactful that'll be at the moment, but go ahead.
Shanique, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, I just joined in the conversation this weekend. As a matter of fact, I did some reading between last night and this morning, finding out all this juiciness for and the reality of the Sovereign Wealth Fund. The reality for the Bahamas is there is not a sovereign wealth fund in place sufficiently enough to take care of what is going on. Countries that are using the funds from their sovereign wealth fund have been in existence from 1971, 1976. And these countries are countries whose natural resources mainly is oil. Pronounce that for me, Aisha Oil. And the funds from their natural resource, mainly oil, are used to reinvest. And the funds from the investment is used to take care of different demands. One country in particular, during the pandemic, they used monies from their fund to supplement everything. For us, we had to take out loans. I would hate to believe that the government of the Commonwealth of Bahamas have $3 trillion in a fund locked away and has borrowed almost $3 trillion in the last 3 years. I will hate to believe that.
Did you say 3 as in T or 3 as in billion?
Sorry, 3 billion.
Oh, okay.
3 billion, sorry, $3 billion. I would hate to believe that we have access to 3 billion fund and money set aside in a fund that is used by every country for times like this, for every country.
What do these countries use it for? Because we know this isn't a natural resources discussion. It's talking about diversifying this economy that's so necessary. But what do they use their sovereign wealth fund for?
Mainly, the majority of the countries, there are 1 or 2 exceptions that I have read upon so far, but the majority of the countries use their sovereign wealth fund for investment portfolios, investing in different like pension plans, especially real estate, currency in different countries where there's much return. When we look at Norway, for instance, Norway have a $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund, and Norway has just hired wealth managers to manage different portfolio. One portfolio was given $60 million to invest. But the trick is they invest inside different markets where the risk is not as great, and they're sure to get returns.
When they get these returns, where does it go to the people? Does it go to lessening the burden on the people? How does that happen?
Lessening, Norway in particular, lessening the burden on the people for social services, for infrastructure, education, medical. Alaska gives out dividends. Alaska gives out dividends from 1982. Alaska has given out dividends every October, according to my research, to every person living. Words are so important. Living in Alaska at the time, they didn't say citizens, for every individuals between the ages of 17 to 65 living in Alaska from this fund, not from the fund, but from the interest, whatever the interest they get from the investment portfolios, they divide amount citizenship. And from 82 to present, it has been between $330 per person to $1,200 per person annually. Each October, the dividends is shared out. And so people need to go ahead, take some time out of their day, read up on this information, easy language, find out for themselves. Don't allow themselves to be stirred on with pipe dreams. If the Bahamas were to come into $1 billion or say $5-10 billion, we have a national debt at this time of $8.88 billion US billion dollars. And then we also have to look at infrastructure. Somebody told me in making inquiries for the show, we have national infrastructure is all over 40 years old, and even at the infancy, it was not done properly. And so we are not a country who say, oh, if we come into $10 billion, give everybody a check. We have so much grounds to cover. The possibilities are great, but we have to look at our reality. It will not, if we are going to get a check, if, the big if, because government make assignment to how they use the sovereign wealth funds. It is not automatic. They decide what they're going to use. They would decide whether or not everybody get a dividend or a check. But we have,
Glenn Wright.
Sorry, we have great problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Glenn Wright, jump in, because I know that you were having a little audio issue a minute ago. I'm not sure where you want to jump in, if on continue what you were saying and or any area.
Yeah, something what Peggy said initially. You know what Biden is doing, what is right for the country of the United States. Now, to the extent that helps the Bahamas, I think so, because we have to understand, we have been attached to America and its growth in terms of economic development for many years, and we have benefited from their growth and development. And so any step that their government is doing to curtail this pandemic will help us in the long run. So we need that stabilization. I think what was happening is the continuous spiraling out of case scenario with regards to COVID was transpiring in America. And as a result, it created more and more of hysteria and more fear. So travel was something that people didn't have on their mind. And now with them trying to arrest the situation, that's going to augur well for the Bahamian experience. Now, to the other aspects of our economy, I was saying that people think that we should just jump into a new industry. You can't just jump into new industry. Industries takes time, takes money to start up. It takes resources, it takes people, it takes the know-how. And one of the challenges is, even we talk about farming and all the other stuff, right? One major hurricane could wipe out any investment that we would have placed in certain areas in this country. We could turn around and say, let's make an investment in farming, and we build the infrastructure, a couple $1 billion or $1 million inside Andres. And then all of a sudden, where we are, we have to take our time. We have to realize the realities. We can't afford to gamble, okay? We can't afford to gamble right now with the economy, especially in the state that we're in. We need to find ways to generate more revenue, of course, but at the same time, we cannot afford to take a risk and throw the dice, as they say, in terms of where we are in this economic development of the Bahamas. We have had too many different things that has happened to the country. We have had Dorian, we have COVID, and then we have the tourism market being impacted. So we have to recognize the times we're in. And so we have to be wise in our pursuits, but also we got to be hopeful in our pursuits as well. We cannot look at it as a doom and gloom. This will pass. This will come to an end. And what the thing that we have to realize as Bahamians is, when it does come to an end, what steps are we going to take to ensure that we don't find ourselves as personally in a situation where we're struggling financially or whatever the case may be? The government can't alone do it. We have to take responsibility for our actions, our spending habits, our saving habits. We have to take some responsibility. And if we continue to allow thought process to be thrown towards just one entity, meaning the government, we will always cripple ourselves from making the steps necessary to make ourselves better in every situation. We talk about new industries. We expect the government to make a new industry. Well, why we can't form family structures to come together and come as a corporate and start your own business, start your own industry as a family unit? There have been many examples of that we have seen around the world, and not only around the world, in his own country. But our over-reliance on government, as I often say, has made us crippled to the point that we are suffering. And so we need to get off of that. And that's my bottom line thought process.
So final thought for you all to consider and each respond to. We know from last year, the Minister of, I think, Public Service, Brenda Roll, and NIB in particular, talked about the fact that, listen, that fund is running out. In fact, I thought it would have sort of slowed by now, but maybe they're trying to work a miracle to keep it going with more people joining the unemployment line and not receiving a paycheck. So my thing is, why do we have this? I was just in a conversation over the weekend where people are just happy to be a little free or freer to go party. Why is it that our mindset is still trained on not looking at the reality, at the economy of this country, at economies around the world, at the fact that, listen, the job that you may desire isn't readily available because the economy is limping along or perhaps at a standstill? When are we going to get it? When are we going to get it? Considering the fact that government resources are not in the abundance that they were this time last year. Anybody could jump in first and then the other two.
Okay, Shanique. The Bible says there were 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins. We have to decide which one. I've decided to join the line and ranks of the wise virgins. Last year, I did a lot to assist other persons who were struggling along the way, and it is a stressful ordeal. This, at the end of the year, I decided, Peg, at one point, you got to learn to say no. You can't be Jesus Christ. You got to learn to say no. And so we have to make personal decisions. So last year I was able to come into a couple extra dollars, working on the side. I was putting that in savings because you have to store up. And so that's the approach. I have managed to get my electrical bill down to $65. Wow. Because I occupy one room and that's where lights are. You understand what I'm saying? And so we have to adjust ourselves. Last month, my bill was 77. This month, my bill is 65 because I recognize that this season is upon us and it ain't going nowhere and things will get tighter. So I am making personal decisions. My grocery bill is cut down. I was so proud. Me and my co-workers, everybody had their lunch they brought from dinner yesterday. You have to make personal decisions.
We have to readjust.
Yeah, so join the wise. Join the wise, do the prudent thing, take responsibility for your life because the government already advised you. They too are struggling.
Aisha?
Great point. Like you said, there were 5 wise and 5 silly, and I believe that people, like we have not come to a place where we take responsibility for ourselves, what we doing, what are we doing with the money that we have? Yes, we are in the Bahamas and the cost of living is high. In the Bahamas, the reality is the cost of living is high. VAT is on everything. What are we going to do personally? We can't depend on the government. The government saying, listen, I need help myself. So what are we going to do? Are you going to sit there and die? Or are you going to start thinking of innovative ways to do things? Okay, we have a lot of people at Atlantis who are furloughed. Could you cook? What is in your hand that you can do to make an extra dollar? You understand what I'm saying? People can eat regardless. Like you said, Peggy, you brought lunch to work and you did something differently. Everybody is not going to think like that. So maybe you can open up, do something, get your license. Hello, get your license, people, and do something where you can cook. Now I know everybody can't cook because we had some serious, we ain't gonna go there. That's a different story for a different day. However, what is it can you do to sustain your family at this time? This has been going on for years, not the pandemic, but people have been in farming and they came out. We are resilient people. We have to think outside of the box. Every 5 cents you get, don't have to spend on weave. Listen, You could do these, wash them and do them over. Y'all know
Exactly.
how we used to do it. Yeah, every Friday you ain't gotta find something to wear, ain't nowhere to go. You need to sit down and you need to take responsibility for your life. Hey, we are in this, and listen, everybody needs somebody, but right now I gotta be the savior for myself, because ain't nobody gonna save me. Ain't nobody standing out, no anchor to pull me up. Listen, this between me and God, and get serious about it. And look here, I got to figure out how I can do this. I ain't gonna die in this situation, because we will get out. But in the process, I have to live, and how I live, it's my responsibility to figure that out. It's not the government. So they done telling you only getting $20. What you could get out the food stuff for $20, you can eat tuna and grits all day, every day. If that's what it has to come to, then do that. But what I am saying is, we have to, as a people, take responsibility. Yes, we're here. What can I do to get myself to ride the storm? What can I do? Stop looking to the left. Stop looking. Nobody got no answer for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Nobody has the answer. The government already said we have the answer. So you have to be the answer to your own questions. You have to be the answer. You got to be your resource. What are you going to do to get yourself out there and be honest? Be real and be honest. You understand? You ain't got to go on Wendy's line every day. Even though they're making all these value meals attractive and all, listen to me, you still spending. You're still spending. You go home and cook. That could be 2-3 meals, something. You understand what I'm saying? Rather than you eating not what you can do, eat now and die. No, you're gonna need to figure out how we can get this to flow, because we need this to flow, because we're not gonna die in this. We're coming out of this resilient, and we're moving on to greater. That's what I have.
Absolutely, Glenroy.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things is, I don't know if you remember that commercial many years ago when the fella said, he broke the little girl. But the reality is this, men love life because they destroy their illusions. And so by that, we don't want to hear the truth. What we're saying is the truth. The reality is that we need to find ourselves in a situation where we work together to get through the situation. If we don't work together, you got families who still living apart, still buying apart. You got to pool your resources, share up the stuff that you get. You have to work through this. This is only a short period of time that we're going through this situation. But if we work together, we can come through this. But if everybody want to have this selfish approach to dealing with this situation, you will find that it's much more difficult. Yeah, I understand it's difficult. I understand it's challenging. Everybody has their own challenges. But if you don't learn how to work and navigate through the challenges of life, you will stay there and be pacified by the complaints. And the complaints you can't take to the bank. You can't take your frustration to the bank. You can't take your complaint to the gas station. You have to take your ideas to make it work for you and work together as a family unit to make sure that you go and get yourself through the situation. And so if we stop wallowing in the complaints and stop wallowing in the negativity, we'll find opportunities that are at our doorsteps. But more often than not, we just love to comfort ourselves with this negative and all this, or the government, or the government, or the government. And guess what? You would stay there and die, like Crystal said. Eat and live for one day and then you die. No, you gotta live. You gotta continue to have a mindset of progression. But the challenges our people have to see differently. And I implore a lot of those who are in leadership as well. We have to stop pacifying our people with this mindset that, yes, everything is bad because the government. Everything isn't bad because the government. We also had a responsibility when we were making money. Listen, in the tourism industry, some people made more money than people who working now. That's a fact. But guess what happened? A lot of people were irresponsible in their behaviors as well. Some people were buying $1,000 iPhones. Some people buying phones and stuff that don't have any true value. And look at it. All those things that we have today aren't even necessary. You don't need all that stuff right now because you ain't going nowhere in the first place. So you ain't need all the jewelry and all the other stuff. But you take your time, look at things that are valuable, things that are valued. And the things that are valued is each other. And the things that are valued is the time we spend, how we elevate each other, how we lift each other up. And the negativity ain't going to do it for us.
Wow, excellent, excellent advice. Panelists, I thank you all so much. And I thank you all for sticking around for the extra few minutes. Of course, at the top of the show, you have to catch it if you have not. Minister of Tourism, Dionisio D'Aguila, was at the top of the show, really describing in very candid terms the state of the tourism industry, the state of our hotels. He also talked about the fact that Atlantis furloughed additional workers just today and why they did that, and what he and other ministers of tourism from around the region are now doing to try and get to America to say, listen, hold up, can we revisit some stuff? He was very open, very frank, didn't hold back on anything. And so if you missed that, you have to go and watch it. Do share the live stream, tag several people in it, and again, watch that interview with him. And of course, the Hot Topics panel came behind and they assessed a lot of what he had to say, and also added some good meat of where we as a country, we as an individual, you know, individuals make up a country. And so where we ought to be looking and our thoughts and mindset must be. I thank you all so very much. Of course, thank you to Minister of Tourism, Dionisio de Aguila, for stopping by. Thank you very much, Candace Scott, Glenroy Pratt, and also Aisha Claire. Thank you, you each very much. Thank you so much, Cara. Thank you very much, Savannah. Everybody have, and hey, social media audience, I did not forget y'all. Thank you all so much. I know you all had tons of comments, questions, observations. Was trying to get in more with the minister though, so that we all could hear what it is that's happening. But I thank you all for participating today. Thank you so much. Again, share the live stream and see you all on Wednesday. God bless. Hey, and we have some good surprises coming up for you too.
I need a little conversation. You need